Ready. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Jen. This is Christian. We are part of the ISP, the Internet Service Provider and Connectivity Provider constituency within ICANN. And I know a lot of you probably have had experience with ICANN before, maybe have been involved. To be honest, I've just been involved actively over the past few years, but there's a lot changing right now, a lot of developments happening right now, so we thought it'd be a good opportunity to come share some of our experiences and what we're doing at the ISPCP with you. So let's see. So ICANN, it's a nonprofit multi-stakeholder body established in 1998 with the job of managing and coordinating the global internet's domain name system and unique identifiers to ensure the operability, stability, and security of the internet. This includes a lot of technical functions around allocation and assignment of IP addresses, management of generic top-level domains and country code top-level domains, and much more. And in addition to providing these technical operations, ICANN also defines policies for how the names and numbers of the internet should run. So there are 3 meetings a year held around the world. The next one actually starts this weekend in LA, and there are remote participation options, so it's not too late if this next half hour piques your interest. So let's see. We'll just do a little bit about ICANN's organizational structure. There's a lot on that slide, but I guess the main takeaway is that ICANN operates under a multi-stakeholder model, decentralized, bottoms-up, consensus-driven, with a lot of different players here. And we have someone from ICANN with us in the audience, so if I say everything, if everything is wrong, just go talk to him later and he'll sort you out. So you'll see at the center here, they have a board of directors that has the ultimate authority to approve or reject policy recommendations, but the supporting organizations and advisory committees that are surrounding that circle really drive the policy recommendations that go to the board. And there's a nomination committee you see at the bottom there that appoints made up of volunteers, 8 seats to the board. There's an ombudsman for a neutral party, and there's a government advisory committee that interacts with ICANN as the main governmental advice in terms of national regulations that come up or international agreements, things like that. And with all these players, ICANN really focuses, I'm going to say multi-stakeholder a lot, I apologize, but it really focuses on this grassroots policy making. So you have the different groups here that within their areas of expertise weigh in and develop the policies that come out of ICANN on ICANN's technical management, basically. So that's where a lot of you could be really helpful on some of these technical areas that we work on. And all contribute, really. There are working groups, there are comments. We'll get into that more later, but there are a lot of ways to play in ICANN. So. Now, as we said, we're part of the ISPs, and you see, and this is part of, there are a lot of acronyms here, but this is part of the Generic Name Supporting Organization, which recommends ICANN policies related to generic top-level domains. So within the GNSO, they're the contracted parties house, and they are basically contracted to ICANN. And then there's the non-contracted parties house. And we're part of the commercial stakeholder group. And the ISPCP is really unique in this sense. There are people that weigh in on intellectual property interests, on their businesses, but the ISPs are the ones that really have a unique role in the nuts and bolts of the internet and dealing with the users day to day on the front line. Let's see. And I guess I should say, I won't go back to it, but the council also is made up in a way that really has checks and balances. So the GNSO council has people from different parts of ICANN as well to ensure that no one party really takes control of that. So what are the ISPs? So I think this slide might be reversed with the next, so bear with me if that's the case. But as mentioned, technology-oriented, concerned for the sustainable operation of internet infrastructure. And ICANN, as part of its strategic focus, looks at things like DNS stability and security, IPv6 rollout, and this is something of keen interest for us at the ISPs. And as said, represent the users who are our customers, really. So, slide a bit repetitive, but yeah, part of the commercial stakeholder group. and who we are, ISPs, connectivity providers, and the associations that represent us. And we've been involved in this, obviously, in these issues from even before the start. So we're going to get into some of the more technical issues in a minute here, but we wanted to take a moment to highlight internet governance issues at a high level, because there's a lot going on right now. And while we're concerned about the technical issues, there are also a lot of issues on the higher level internet governance space that could really impact us now. A lot of debates and discussion that are likely to result in changes that will impact all of us and our businesses. So. Quick overview, a lot more people are getting involved in this space right now, and there's a lot up for grabs. And last autumn, we saw a group of organizations involved in the technical infrastructure, so ISOC and IETF and regional internet registries and so on, come together on what was called the Montevideo Statement. And a lot of this came out of the surveillance revelations, concern about the loss of trust on the part of users and so on in the internet. So they called for catalyzing the interest and community efforts in this area. And noting that the internet, a lot came out of the internet, but there needs to be continued involvement as the internet changes and grows. And so there's just a snapshot here of a lot of the meetings that have been taking place, and there's a lot more than what's up here, and a lot more coming up that reflect on this. But Net Mundial took place. That was the Brazilian president called for this. Again, part of the surveillance revelations led to this. But it really was, in the preparation lead up to the meeting, there really was a unprecedented amount of interest and preparation on the part of the global community for this. The World Telecommunications Development Conference. So here, getting developing countries involved in this issue is obviously huge issue, and it was an opportunity for them to really focus on telecom priorities. So, it's one of these issues where there are threats out there for potential government involvement in the internet, and in a way that would potentially hinder innovation going forward, or the way that we face business models or business choices we make. And so ensuring that any key nations who are disengaged are able to come into this process is really important. So that was a good forum for that. The Internet Governance Forum, again, this was in Istanbul this past year, a really big chance for the community to get together and discuss these issues. A lot of questions around what it's going to look like going forward. So again, there's a lot up for grabs right now. And the ITU Planning Pot Conference, International Telecommunications Union definitely has a solid place in this space, but there are a lot of questions about how much authority they do have in the internet space and what's good and not to ensure the openness of the internet. So a lot being discussed right now. And then I should just say that ISPs are involved in both within ICANN and in all those organizations and all those conferences as well. So we play in a lot of areas. How to keep up with the issues, public comments. I won't get into much on this, but there you can take a look at where people have commented on all these range of issues. And the Security and Stability Advisory Committee is something that our party is very interested in. So there are a number of reports that come out in working groups, and so this page just is an example of how you can see what's happening and get involved. So yeah.
Thank you very much. So Jen's giving you a little bit of background on what ICANN is and specifically what the ISPCP is. Now I would like to try and convince you that it is relevant to you guys as network operators and that this is something that you guys should be involved in, which I know might be a hard sell. I'm starting with this SSAC slide for a reason, because the Security and Stability Advisory Council within ICANN deals with the concept that on the internet, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You want to make sure that the internet is a stable and secure place that can grow. But we know that the internet is constantly changing. ICANN is in part responsible for that with programs like the GTLD program. So we need to make sure that as decisions get made about how the internet can continue to grow and thrive, that the right people are at the table to make the right decisions. And Jen and I are just a couple of years into our involvement at ICANN. We're still relatively new compared to a lot of the people, maybe even some of you in this room who are in some way involved in ICANN. We've taken our look under the tent and we're sort of saying, we're not sure the right people are involved. We think there need to be more technical minds around some of the things that are going on here, particularly with regards to, as an example, the types of things that I'm going to show you today. But they're just examples. The 4 that I'm going to very quickly go through is examples of the things that have relevance to you guys as network operators. They're only examples because I kind of believe that we're around 1% of realizing the true potential of the internet. Now the internet's in our shoes, it's in our toasters, it's everywhere. When we're talking about providing service to people, we're doing it in ways that we never imagined before. And as the internet grows, as people get to make decisions about how the internet is going to be able to grow, we're going to need to balance, if it's not broke, don't fix it, against a whole bunch of other other situations. And having the minds of the network operators, the people that serve the users, the people that really know this stuff from an nitty-gritty level is vitally important. So I'll go through these 4 issues, and if you don't think that I'm the world's foremost expert on the 4 issues I'm going to present to you, good. Probably not. But that sort of proves my point. We need minds like yours in here, active on these subjects, in order to make sure that ICANN, as a multi-stakeholder body, is making the right decisions. So we're going to start with name collision, go through it briefly. There was a session on this the other day. I believe, Joe, you can get the materials. If Joe Catapano is over there from ICANN, Jen mentioned him. And if there are any of these subjects that you want more information on, track down Joe after this. He's going to stick around for like a half an hour after this. So there was a session that Joe can get you information on, and even the slide deck on after this if you want. But name collisions is something that has, I guess, been relevant for a long time, but has become increasingly relevant in the era of GTLD issuance. We are now at a time where within the course of this year, they're going to be potentially releasing up to 1,000 new GTLDs into the system, into the global DNS. We use as an example on this slide .corp. Now, a name collision is when you have an internal naming convention in an internal system. Let's say you built an internal system never thinking that the TLD.corp was going to be issued. But it was, and you created systems so that you would get your mail by accessing .mail.corp. And that's how you got your mail transported, sent around individually, sent around through your systems. Well, the day that .corp gets issued into the global DNS, your mail request is going to hit the global DNS, and yesterday, they said, oh, that's not us, and so it went ahead and went to your internal systems, and you got to your mail system. The next day, oh, that is us. And then we have security concerns. The mail that you were sending to an internal system is potentially out there, going to an external system. Information may be leaking out to the public DNS, malicious use of internal name certificates. You have potential reachability issues. You're headed to a website that you didn't think you were supposed to go to. You're heading to somewhere that's in the global DNS that you thought was going to be an internal system. So this is something that, as ISPs, we have decided to take an active role in trying to, okay. Okay, I'm talking about ISPs being, we're talking about ICANN, I'm talking about the ISPCP, which is the segment of ICANN in which we work in. So when I'm using the phrase as ISPs, I'm saying within the ISPCP constituency, which is what we are concerning ourselves with today, because we're soliciting your help within the ISPCP constituency and asking to join the ISPCP constituency. So we as ISPs took a look at this potential situation, and we said, this could be something that could be potentially disruptive to our customers. We're going to get those phone calls when these things happen, and so we were part of the group that started raising concerns and trying to make sure that the right research was done to try and figure out the scope of this potential problem, and try to determine what could be done about it. We saw that there was a potential scope of impact of a number of different people from ISPs to regular firms, and so we were part of the multi-stakeholder process. Let's make this a dialogue. Yes.
Mike.
Mike.
Hi, Warren Kamari, Google, speaking as an
You're
individual.
tearing your hair out, so we should engage.
Only a little. So I'm a member of the ICANN Security and Stability Advisory Committee.
Yes.
I'm the person who took name collisions and internal name certs to SAC.
Yes.
Also part of RSAC caucus and the ICANN technical expert group. I'm not entirely sure which bits you're saying the ISP-CP actually did with this.
What parts we're actually taking? We're not taking.
Well, you said that the ISP-CP came along and did a bunch of stuff. In your
No.
answer.
Okay. See, this
Well,
is.
maybe I misunderstood that. Then.
Yes, I think so. That's not the. Okay. So what we're doing is we're conflating two different things here. So we are talking about what the multi-stakeholder community did, of which your group took. We started with the SAC slide because we talked about the work that has been done by that group. Actually, to be completely honest, when we're talking about the ISPCP, we're talking about a group that needs more technical resources. Because we're talking about a group that has the potential to significantly impact the dialogue. We are non-contracted parties to ICANN, which means that we don't have the same business perspective as the registries and the registrars who have commercial interests when it comes to engaging with getting money from domain names, right? We are concerned primarily with security and stability, but our constituency is relatively small and relatively non-technically focused with the people that are in it right now. In fact, in general, within the commercial stakeholders group, which is the ISPCP, the business constituency, and the IPC within ICANN, it is mostly lawyers and business people. And that's the problem that I'm trying to get at as we're going through these issues. We need more minds like yours, who is rightfully in, dealing with the SSAC. We need more minds like yours within the ISPCP. We need more people like the people in this room engaging on this stuff so that we can make an impact. We're not. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I 100% agree that we need more representation from sort of people in this room, people to actually show up and help support the cause, and less lawyers and salespeople.
Okay, that's great. So that's the whole point of the talk, is we need, there are a lot of lawyers and salespeople, there are a lot of business people, there's not a lot of technical mind, and there are technical issues. And I was in no way trying to take a look at any of these issues and take credit within the ISPCP for having done this. If anything, I'm saying we are not making enough impact, and we should be the place that makes impact.
Yeah, apologies if I gave any impression as such, and very glad you're here. Quite honestly, you aren't necessarily the target audience that we're getting at too, right? Like Christian said, we're talking to those people who aren't involved, who should be talking to you too about how to get involved, and you could very easily be up here too. So.
Absolutely. So you know what? We're giving a basic overview of name collisions, which is something that I definitely think that you should inform yourself on. But it's a way to give you an example of one of the reasons why your technical expertise is necessary at ICANN. Here are some of the things that ICANN, after having taken the recommendations of the multi-stakeholder community, including the ISPCP, we definitely did put in our comments and things like that. Those certainly didn't make the kind of impact that the SSAC made. In doing things like reserving the delegation of .home and .corp, potentially reserving which I actually think is going to be also reserved, the delegation of .mail. There are reports out there, there are guidelines, you should go ahead and read them. We'll get to some slides that show you some good resources, but Joe is also a good resource. just go to the ICANN website and pull up SSAC documents, or the page specifically outlining what's going on with name collisions, and you can absolutely get all the information that you need. Learn about what's happening with the loopback address 127.0.53.53. If you see that on your networks, it's a red flag. .53, of course, it's the DNS port, so it should be relatively easy for you to identify that and say, okay, I might have a potential issue here. But the truth is that after all the work that we have done, we've found that so far there haven't been a tremendous number of issues to date. However, most of that's going to come in the second level delegations, right? In the example that I gave at the very beginning with .mail.corp, nothing happens when .corp gets issued. When .mail.corp gets issued, maybe 2-3 years later, that's when you have the potential name collision. So we still don't actually know the impact of what's going on, even though we're hundreds of GTLDs out the door. So it's something that we as network operators, you as network operators, need to continue to keep an eye on, and as this continues to be an issue, we would love your voice and your engagement. These are the reports that we took a look at. I believe these slides will be publicly available, so you can go ahead and pull this information from that. So we'll move very quickly on to TLD, universal acceptance of IDNs. Going to cover these things briefly because we want to get you guys to the break. And in general, TLD is a top-level domain in the domain name system, such as .com. Most of these have traditionally been 3 letters long, but now we're at the point where we not only have potentially thousands of GTLDs, but they're in a ton of non-ASCII character sets. So it's a little bit of a history. 2010 was the first non-ASCII ccTLD is launched, but now we've got potentially thousands of them. This has been something that ICANN has been looking at for a number of different reasons, but one obvious one is there is a Cyrillic character that looks a lot like an A. You don't want somebody being able to register a domain name with Bank of America, but with the A being a Cyrillic A, and all of a sudden they use that for phishing, and that's a really bad thing. So it's obvious that they want to be leaders in this field of making sure that there is good standardization around how character sets are dealt with, non-ASCII character sets are dealt with on the internet. So a lot of work is being put within this community into standardization. However, this ends up not being just an ICANN-specific problem because there are systems that go way beyond the DNS in which this affects. And if we are not focusing on making sure that our systems are embracing the new standards that are quickly being developed, the new TLDs are not as useful as they could or should be, the customer communities relying on non-Latin scripts continue to be disadvantaged, and we see ultimately slower growth of the internet. ISPs used to be blamed for blocking new TLDs, but it has tended to be systems issues, systems that needed to be updated to handle these new character sets. There may be some new services that are run by an ISP that inadvertently do limit these new TLDs. Email, HTTP, and DNS. Our core example. Faulty email is a primary concern to many non-Latin script writers, not being able to get their emails because of some system that doesn't allow non-Latin character scripts, isn't supporting the new standards. Many browsers go ahead and they go straight to search. User type strings in browsers that are valid URLs should be treated as such. Some new TLDs are converted to search strings. And if ISPs host HTTP services, customers need to be able to use any name and any written script, even if the script is not local to the ISP's region. So these are things that we, as network operators, need to work on, and being engaged in the process of the Universal Acceptance Program that ICANN is leading in, and the ICANN community is leading in, is important for your users, and another example of why you guys should engage, even if it's not for the 10,000-foot level stuff. I'm going to skip over this stuff, but it will be in the slides later, and we'll move very quickly onto GTLD WHOIS issues. WHOIS is a system that we've been talking about reforming now for about 15 or 16 years. Pretty much nobody's happy with who is. And ICANN has actually gone through a number of different studies of how to approach who is, and it's a hard lift. It's a hard lift because there are lots of different groups. I mean, it's sort of a microcosm of how the multi-stakeholder system works. Everybody's got their own agenda, everybody's got their own goals. I'm going to specifically talk about two groups because as network operators running internet companies, we're probably pretty familiar with these two groups. Addressing the needs of privacy needs of consumers and addressing the law enforcement needs of people trying to solve crimes on the internet. Trying to balance those two is something that is extremely difficult, but it's something that this community has keen insight on. And so ultimately, these are the kinds of questions that we're asking within the ICANN community. Why is who is data collected? What's the purpose of providing data? Who collects the data? How long should data be retained? Who needs data and for what purpose? Who needs access logs for what purpose? And for what purpose? So there was an expert working group who's already issued its report. That report is now being analyzed and submitted to the ICANN board. There is a whole lot of stuff that still has yet to be done, stuff that we need, the community needs feedback on in order to figure out what next steps are going to be. This is an example of all the kinds of registration data that's collected, examples of all the kinds of registered information that we're talking about in a future who is. And there's still discussions that are going on about whether they should build this thing using an aggregated RDS model or a federated RDS model. So if you want to get into the nuts and bolts of how to reform something that you probably in some respects use every day, now's a good opportunity to go in and get your feet wet with a working group. The last thing that we'll very briefly touch on is the IANA functions. I was speaking to a gentleman the other day, and I said that one of the great things about the internet is that it's not owned by anybody, and he says, it's owned by the Department of Commerce. Well, you're talking about the IANA function, I suppose. Well, we're in the process right now of, as a multi-stakeholder community, of trying to come up with a plan to transition the IANA function from the IETF to the multi-stakeholder community in some way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, not the IETF, the NTIA. I'm so sorry. I can't get back. There we go. So we are in the process of doing that. I promised that I would keep this talk focused on what it is we were doing from a technical perspective, and how this stuff was going to be relevant to you as network operators. The only thing that I will say, as far as IANA transition goes, that's relevant to you guys, is that the decisions that need to be made as part of that process needs to ensure that the security and stability of the internet continues to function as well or better than it has traditionally. And there are parts of this process, there are parts of the stewardship and transition process that can be relevant to you. And if you're interested in engaging in that part of the process, how do we make sure that this thing continues to run smoothly because I don't want my network going down? You should engage and talk to us, because this is a pretty aggressive timeline that they're talking about. Ultimately, I'm concerned with the last question, why you should join the Internet Service Provider and Constituency Providers working group. And what it comes down to is we have the potential to be a really great group, a really great voice within the ICANN community. We should be full of geeks. We should be full of people that understand how to operate networks and have the perspective of a body that just wants to make sure that the internet, as it grows, can continue to be stable and secure. We don't have the right makeup. We've got a great group. It's a wonderful group of individuals. If you came to work with us, you'd be working with a whole bunch of individuals who are helpful and thoughtful and hardworking. But but I'm one of the more technical people in the group, and that's a problem, you know? So that we can get you to break, we can go ahead and take questions from the audience, and it can be on any one of these issues, with the caveat that we're not necessarily the world's foremost experts on these things. And that's sort of the point.
First question over here to my left.
Hey.
Mic check, right. Martin Levy, Cloudflare. Heck, I'll speak on behalf of my company then. Everybody else doesn't. Why not? I've sat through 3 or 4 of your meetings at various ICANNs around the world, including the last one, which was in London. It's as boring as heck.
It's boring.
And I'm going to explain why. You've already said you want help from this community, and I'm going to ask 2 simple questions. I was in the room for your meeting, and I come from the ISP environment. Was anybody else at this meeting? Yeah, so you weren't. It was in the bottom room of the hotel in the basement.
Yeah.
You don't get very high billing with inside ICANN even, right? You need help, right? And all I'm going to say is you've got to make your meeting more interesting to this community, and I'm not too sure I know how, having sat through it. You are an important voice. Everything you said, including that last point about why people should join. My criticism is not that it's not that exciting. It's the fact that there has to be a better way of bridging between this community of operators and what you're doing as the bridge towards the rest of ICANN. And this is separate from SSAC and other things that happen that does have a bridge between these 2 environments, and definitely far more so in DNS type environments. But from an ISP point of view, you've got to go and hand canvas through this room, and you've got to convince people that their voice is important, because there are things that do affect them, and it affects them potentially on even a daily basis. I've sat there and I've said I've desperately tried to get interested in what you guys are doing. It's hard. And I think that you need to bring more people in like myself, and we need to finally walk up to the mic and say something. I've not said anything in any of your meetings for the last umpteen sessions. So I'll come talk to you afterwards, but my comment really is to the rest of the audience. Go find out about this. If you're in LA next week, somewhere in a small room will be this group. Try and spend some time and find out what's going on. Try and have a voice, because we as operators need to know everything else that could potentially affect us. That's all. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Martin. That's fantastic. I would love to talk with you. You're right. You're absolutely right. And as a relatively newcomer to the ISPCP, this is one of the things that I am, and I think Jen is keenly interested in accomplishing. A lot of the people that are there, they have been doing tremendous work for the life of ICANN. But this group, it's too important not to grow. It's too important not to grow. And to do that, we need to make sure that we breathe new life into this group, make it more exciting to engage. It's what we're working on doing. Would love your help in doing it. Thank you.
Warren. So, Warren Kumari again. First off, I'd like to apologize for getting all excitable earlier.
I'm glad you did.
Okay. So what Martin said is true. These meetings are really boring. In fact, all of the ICANN meetings are fairly horrendous. You'll go along there, they're lawyers, they're salespeople, they're, in general, incredibly self-serving. However, unfortunately, the decisions that get made at ICANN have the ability to make your life as an ISP really sucky. If you don't want your life to be sucky, please come along and try, join the ISPCP, join at large, join some group. Even if you don't join the group, just come along and show up and try and breathe some technical clue into many of the decisions. Many of the participants have no idea how the DNS works and truly don't care. This seems like a problem.
Yes, this is a problem. Absolutely.
Andrew Dahl speaking for myself. I've also been involved in the RAR community for a long time. So the thing about your presentation that I found interesting was that I'm not really sure what's unique about your organization. Every other of the elements that you brought up are all being worked in other groups. And so what is the problem that is unique to your group that you are trying to solve? And that was the question that I ended up trying to ask myself during this talk, because a lot, as you said, all these other things are being addressed in other places. So it's like a group without a mission and a specific problem statement from your presentation. And honestly, I have not been involved with your group, so I don't know, but I did not understand what is unique about your group from your talk today.
That's completely fair. Just in order to, and this may have been a problem from my perspective, from my presentation. When you say my group, do you mean the ISPCP or ICANN in general?
ISPCP.
Okay, fantastic. Understood. What I think is specifically unique about our group is that we are the people that build the nuts and bolts of the internet, the people that build the internet, but not the ones that are contracted to ICANN, not the ones that make money at domain names. And so we have this unique perspective where we don't necessarily need to give answers to questions, engage in the system, how the internet gets to continue to grow and change, from the perspective of we need to make sure that we can make more money on domain names next week, next month, next quarter. We get to do it from the perspective of we also build the internet like they do, but we just need to make sure that our users are going to be able to log on tomorrow and not see any major problems. That is the unique identifier of our group, I believe. Most of us run DNS resolvers, but we're not contracted to ICANN.
So I heard that as part of it. That's not compelling enough, I think. I think you need more something.
Okay.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to have to cap it to the two folks at this microphone. I think Christian and Jennifer are going to be open to hearing conversation outside of this session, maybe at the break.
Absolutely. And here's our contact information as well,
Okay.
if you want to get a hold of us after
In the
the
middle.
event.
Heather Schiller, and I actually have a fairly high tolerance for internet politics because I'm on the Aaron Advisory Council. But I actually tried this once or twice. I actually went to the ISPCP meeting, and it was the most horrible and frustrating experience I have ever had at any kind of internet meeting ever. We had real, actual technical things to talk about, and they spent the entire time trying to decide which hub city, what the definition of a hub city was, so that they could make a recommendation to ICANN about where they thought the next meeting should be. As an engineer, I don't give a crap. Like, as long as there's an airport, we'll show up. But work on the actual problems. And so I think what might be happening is you end up having people like Warren Kumari saying, I'm going to actually work in the group where I can solve a technical problem. So I'm going to work on the security group, or I'm going to go actually work in the DNS group. And that's where the engineers will be drawn to, because they can actually have an impact. And to sit in a group and in an advisory capacity, there's not a lot of impact you can have when there's nothing that you produce, there's no decision that you impact. It was extremely frustrating. And if you're saying that that's changed, then great. But I think a lot of people have had that experience, and that's the thing you're going to have to overcome.
You're absolutely right. I'm not saying that it's changed. I'm saying that Jennifer and I are examples of people that are coming into this group and endeavoring to change it, and we're asking for help. We are in the process, and it's probably going to be a process that's going to take a number of more meetings to get to the point where we can really, honestly, what I'm looking for is mavens. I'm looking for people that are willing to take it on the chin for a few meetings while we try and build this into what it can potentially be. I have a great deal of respect for the people that have been working within the PCP for years, but I sat in on meeting after meeting before actually becoming a member and had the same experience you did. My inclination was to go in there and attempt to change that culture because I see potential in what it is we can do within that group. And I hope others will as well.
Hey, last question. I know we have this is a great topic, a lot of discussion, but I'll ask you ask your question briefly and let us wrap up.
Both gentlemen?
Okay.
Unfortunately, I only had time for one more question. I'm very sorry.
All right.
Right here.
Okay. Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom.
You should tell people that the mics are closed before they go up to the mic, typically. That would be a good practice.
Kind of, well, okay, what I have seen of that group has been, well, okay, once in a time a glimpse where it looked like a place where people go and you take this as another stage for doing a little bit of politics. What I did miss in the presentation is, what have you done, guys, actually, in technical topics? What is the plan for things that you have on the plate right now? Knowing that a lot of crazy people are injecting stupidness into our systems is not really news. And yes, it would be nice to do something about it, but kind of, here is another place where this should happen. Is kind of not sufficient reason for directing energy resources there. There are too many places where the battle is going on.
Well, okay, that's a very fair comment. The answer so far is the work that we have been doing has been focused primarily on, did you have one more thing to add? Are you waiting? Okay. For focused primarily on responses to public comment and responses and backing the work of the SAC, doing things like sending letters to the ICANN board, things like that. We should be doing so much more. And here's the thing, the way that ICANN is structured, if you go back to the slide at the very beginning, we have the potential of having a tremendous amount of power and responsibility in this system. We are 1/3 of the commercial stakeholders group. We have a potential big voice and we're not doing much with it, and we can. And so what I'm ultimately saying here is, like, it's almost it's a ninja hack for more of a voice for the people in this room to be able to change things, to be able to affect the internet governance movement in positive ways by getting involved in this group and helping it grow.
Well, okay, there is kind of another part of it. As you are representing a certain stakeholder group there, actually the communication with the stakeholder group is something that is very important and entirely missing.
Communication with the stakeholder group? Okay.
We didn't get information about what you're doing and what your questions are. And it happens very rarely.
Okay, what we're doing and what the questions are. Okay,
Pardon?
you didn't get information about what we're doing and what the questions
Yes, exactly. I didn't see the technical working program. What questions are up?
are? Okay, got it.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris and Jennifer. Very much
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it.